Hi, everyone. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I don't know where, but today we're going to look at that where. And welcome, everyone, to our topic for the month of April. Are you a Netflix bunny down the rabbit hole? So, Caroline, do you want to share a bit why we came up with this topic? I think it came out of your brain somewhere out of the. Um,
Well, yeah, I think there's lots of ways we are finding to recharge in a busy world. And it's not necessarily very easy to find time to recharge if you're working long hours, if you're just feeling too tired to do the things you truly want to do. Sometimes it's easy just to kind of go, oh, shall we watch a movie? So Netflix um, is a great way of getting to just celebrate life, but instead of living it, you're watching others living a life. So it's not only are we choosing a film, we're choosing an experience. So we're choosing whether we want something happy, funny, a bit of comedy, whether we want a thriller, a horror, drama, whether we want romance, happy, sad. So we're creating an experience where we can just sit and relax and take time to move into the movie screen, whether we're pretending it's us or whether we're just viewing it and watching what's happening before us. There's always a great, well, not always a great learning. Sometimes you can just lighten up if you're feeling overstressed, or you can be taken deep down to the rabbit hole and you're just watching an experience and taking it all in. So, Angela, you've got plenty of experiences from childhood. I know that you want to
yeah.
share.
Yes, I'm a bit older than Netflix, so my rabbit hole um, was a lot different to the current day Netflix rabbit hole, which is when we're sharing about the rabbit hole experience. There's also that phenomena recently with Netflix of just binging, like getting
Mm,
into a series and watching it from beginning to end till you're still awake at 6 in the morning and you have to go to
mm,
work, and
yeah,
that's a sort of, you know, it's called series. It's addiction, really, but
yeah.
it's a compulsion with Netflix to watch. And for me, because I'm older than Netflix, I used to do it as a kid. I was a pretty much a stay-at-home kid, and I was allowed to watch about 14 hours of TV. I think I watched every program in the
Mm,
70s and all the adult shows, all the kids shows. I just didn't like the news. So I had an
mm.
embargo on the news. And that meant I watched the goodies, if anyone grew up in Australia. So me
Oh,
and
I
Doctor
love the
Who and the
goodies.
goodies, because they were on at the same time as the mainstream news. So that rabbit hole for me was definitely an escape. It was definitely living vicariously. And it was also because I wasn't allowed out of the house, pretty much being a kid of immigrant kids. And it was a way for me to explore. One of the things that we're looking at today is, what are you choosing by going down that rabbit hole? So for me, as a kid that got addicted to TV and found a kind of safety in it, a lot of it was I was choosing safety. I wasn't engaging in social situations because I didn't have that now. So I didn't have social skills. I was socially awkward. I didn't feel like I fit in. So I used the television as a way to pretend that I could have these social engagements, including a lot of romantic engagements, because I was a bit of a romantic aficionado. I still am, but now I've settled down. But I used a lot of the romantic addiction I had as well to live out some sort of fantasies. And I think fantasy is a huge thing with Netflix. We're going to explore that in a bit more depth later, with how fantasy operates with our psyche to make, either to stimulate. But before we go into the fantasy element, um, wanted to also play with the idea of, if you're in the habit of being a Netflix binger or a YouTube binger or any sort of binger on the screen, we're going to look at today some of the choices that are coming up for us when we're doing that, because it's not necessarily a habit that we're doing consciously. So today we're going to look at, what are you choosing when you do that, and what does that imply about how to take yourself forward in life, where you can open up to your desires more, or even maybe discover an aspect of yourself and your own agency in your life, how you can become, like we say in our Facebook group, how you can live yourself magnificently. So one of the things that, Caroline, you brought up was how we use Netflix, or those binging moments with series and movies. We've got someone here who says, "I hear you," but I don't know who it is in the comments section. Um, you've mentioned, Caroline, we use Netflix like edutainment.
Yes, it's well, really, Netflix. It's basically, we are choosing an experience. It's almost like living a life, a very safe way of living a life. You can see how someone gets through an experience, whether that's a romance or a breakup, whether that's an adventure. We can put ourselves in the place of the character, and we're taken through an experience. So it's like we're living through that person, through that experience. And we can actually take knowledge of seeing what happens to them through that character's experience in a situation. And our emotional body can be taken along. Our emotions are taken along that route as well. So we can really feel it as if it was happening to us. Again, mentally, we're being stimulated. We're thinking about it at the time, or maybe afterwards. We can contemplate upon what happens to the character. So we really are taken through the experience. But when you're taken through the experience, but it's not you, you're viewing it, but it's not you, because the characters may have their own fears, they may have their own ways, beliefs, how they're operating, but that's not necessarily yours. So it cannot be your experience. You're watching it. It's knowledge. You're getting to understand something, but afterwards, it's not lived experience. So say you've lived through an experience, you can take the wisdom from the experience and incorporate that into who you are. It can be, how can I say it? It's anchored within you, so it becomes part of your wisdom that you can share and change direction in life. Not so easy from taking the knowledge from a movie. And I know I'm just going to jump back a little bit, because you talked about the 12 hours or the 14 hours and how so
14.
Easy it is for yeah. I was
serious.
yeah. Oh, I love television. You can have a small little world as a child, and you can expand it so far. You can live in another country, another world, another galaxy.
Yeah.
It's, you are on an adventure, and that adventure is inspiring. You can even, see the perfect grandparent or parent, or the child. You can model yourself on certain things. You can feel into it and try it as part of who you are, really. But the truth is, it's nothing. It's that lived experience you'll take forward into your life is what you'll anchor for you. It's not. You can't be a different person that's not meant to be you. You've got to live who you are. But through this experience, whether we're binging, watching Netflix, it's almost like, where's that coming from? It's almost like there's part of us, our emotions, think, oh, let's watch another. It's like eating bags of lollies one after another, at the end of it, what are you left with? If it was bags of lollies, you'd be having this stomach ache. And it's almost like we're quite entitled in a way now. We can choose. We can just say, right, I'm going to take this series, and I'm going to watch each one one after another. And you really are going down the rabbit hole. Years ago, it would be Blockbuster or Video Easy, and you'd just have what you'd purchased or brought home, and you'd watch it, and that would be your experience, or you'd stagger them out. Now it's more that we can really kind of just binge at something, but how helpful that is, I don't know. So really, it's how do we self-manage ourselves? What is the thought processes and the emotions behind how we watch and what we're watching, and what are we wanting to create from the experience we're choosing? So because often there is you may be watching it with others, you may be watching it by yourself, but it starts with a choice, and then if it finishes and then you go on to something else, is there a new choice? Is it just, I may as well watch the next? Is it just automatic? Are we in a automatic, let's just do this, and I suppose it's more seeing how we're choosing, what we're choosing, and what are we taking from the experience if we're just going for the next series or the next movie without sitting back and contemplating upon it or having a break.
One of the things that you've helped me to contemplate was how that automatic thing of just going to the next and the next and the next, you've described it like you're buying time. So instead of stepping into reality, or into maybe being more conscious about what am I choosing, or what are the thoughts or the feelings behind this choice, it's kind of like a feeling of I don't really have to take action in my life. And if you're busy, overworked, maybe pulled by the drama in the world, the larger world, of course there's a lot going on. Yeah. Or there's might be drama in your relationships or in your home. I mean, being able to go to a laptop, which is also even more intimate than the TV, a laptop in your bed, and escape, it's like you're buying this sense of, another concept that you've brought up is this controlled freedom. Like, this is my little burrow, if we use the rabbit hole analogy, and this is me buying time to, like you're saying before, recharge, escape, have time for myself. So there's something to really, I mean, I did that as a kid anyway. I wanted to escape my family many times, and and I lived in the house, so TV was great, but they also gave me that freedom to do that. So the other thing to look at that might be influencing your choices, either for the good, which could be to recharge, or to simply, like we're saying, to expand into your dreams, is that that sense of, with the laptop and with the Netflix sort of never-ending binge cycle, you might actually be liking that sense of I have freedom, and it's my freedom. I'm choosing it. I'm controlling it. Whereas, when we grew up, we were told you can't do this, you can play there. I was told a lot of things. You're not allowed to go out of the house. So that's why I use TV as a sense of freedom for my imagination. And that might be a way to start understanding why you're making these choices.
Getting clear.
Getting clear on that.
Because sometimes it's you want to get out your head. You're maybe overthinking, you're overworking, or you want to watch a comedy to lighten up because you realise you're grumpy and you're not so much fun to be around for others or yourself, because you just need to sit and just relax and rejuvenate. But also it's good to ask, am I pulling myself off purpose? Because it can be a way to, oh, I won't go out tonight. It's dark, it's cold outside. I think I'll just watch this. But you may have a purpose. You may be starting a new hobby, or you may have no hobbies, and it's taking you in a direction of sitting at home alone rather than getting out there and interacting with others and celebrating your life. Because after all, if there was no electricity and you couldn't watch TV or Netflix, there was no internet, then you've got to look, is this real life? Is this my life? Am I watching others living life? And if you are going to create for you in your life, what would it be? So if you find yourself pulling yourself off your purpose, off your life, or you ask yourself, where are my hobbies? What are they? Am I getting out enough? Am I socializing enough? Am I living my life? Because we can procrastinate and not be living our life. And I heard a funny story from a client, and she was saying her children she was watching maths on TV, which is Married at First Sight. And her children kept coming into the room and asking, have you got any brain cells left? And I had another client that said to me, I'm so glad that's over. I've got my life back. And
Yeah.
it really made me think, because if you're willing to give up how many hours a week to watch something that's really not, it might be interesting, but is it creating in your life? It can be a learning curve, but how much time are you willing to give to something? If you could be doing something different or celebrating your life more fully, what would it be? So there's lots of different thoughts we can ask ourselves around being a Netflix bunny. It does give us a lot in the fact that it does take us to experience different experiences and see life from other perspectives, which can be quite beautiful too. So we can, it can open up our life to be inspired, or to read a book, or to climb a mountain, or to speak up. We're following these characters, and they are, they do offer us a lot in the fact that we can choose new experiences through watching these characters.
Yeah, and I wanted to, if you can also explain that one of the pieces, you can elucidate further on that later, about when we see these characters in the movie or series and they're living these choices that they're making, they do inspire us, but sometimes it falls short from that extra piece where we stop to go,
Yeah.
well, what are the choices that I want to make in my life? How do I become an agent of my life? Certainly for me, that happened when I watched every TV series known to mankind in the 70s and 80s, and or humankind, and I discovered every romance thing I could find. And then by the time I got to 18, 19, 20, I had to contemplate, I don't know what the hell to do with anything in romance. And I was freaked out by the thought of actually initiating or experiencing anything physically. So, because I'd lived in a fantasy and I'd seen people have experiences, and I understood the knowledge of certain romantic predicaments and outcomes, but I had no wisdom. I had no lived wisdom. So for me, it was quite frightening to look at what choices. And one of the things I did do was to stop and think, well, what do I want? After many years of not asking that question.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go deeper into this the rabbit hole idea, because we also, when we looked at the topic of the rabbit hole, we found that Netflix and what it's offering us as a culture now, especially for me, what I see people with their laptops or their phone, I find it quite odd to see people with a phone, because to me, cinematic experiences or a TV, I was a small kid watching TV, so it was bigger than me. Or I used to love the big screen experience. It was sort of how I lost myself. But now people are happy with any device, small, intimate devices, and they kind of narrow their vision. And when we were looking at the topic of the rabbit hole, we sort of looked at how it's very much connecting to what we describe as Neptunal type energies, dreamlike energies that don't have a real grounding in reality, but they somehow give you a doorway or a portal into some undercurrents of society. And Neptune as a planet in your birth chart, if you have a look at it, it's also in common with many people of your generation. So a lot of people from the flower power generation have, I forgot what planet their Neptune was in, or the next generation and the Gen Xers had another planet. So that has a lot of impact on how you may feel the TV series or the Netflix series or Amazon Prime or whatever those series are. They reflect also these undercurrents of society that we're looking for to be reflected back to us, which aren't being explored in sort of maybe our social conversations, but the Netflix has been giving us an opportunity to start to feel those undercurrents of things that we can't quite put our finger on, that are different to the generation previously, or maybe have a connection to the generation previously, but they're undergoing a huge transformation. So that thing about the underground feeling of undercurrents, it's quite fascinating how Netflix taps into that.
It's the deep diving. It's the, like you say, it's the undercurrent. It's showing different perspectives from not necessarily like the illusion in a way. We can see an illusion, but behind what we're seeing, there can be a different truth, and that different truth is an element we get to see and get to understand, or maybe even take that understanding into our life and ask more questions on what our current reality is. I mean, I grew up with, Black Beauty and Lassie and, and romances, and the man rescued the woman and they lived happily ever after. And it was almost like I had that expectation that this man was going to come and not save, well, yes, save the princess, and I was the princess. And again, so even it's actually, we're seeing a few things when we see these movies. We can, what are we watching? Is it, has it got an agenda? Because again, there's always stories as well. There's things that have agendas, and what's the agenda and what's behind what you're seeing. So we can deep dive if we wish and look beyond the surface and take our truth from a situation. So we can look at it at many different levels. Don't just take it at face value. The Neptunal energy is like the undercurrent, the stuff that's not necessarily spoken about, which is going on in the background. And so there's so much to movies and TV series. And I'm going to share one of my favorites is a funny comedy called Something's Got to Give, with Diane Keaton in and Keanu Reeves. And I watch that, and there's always something new I see each time. I've watched it about 4 or 5 times, and I still love that movie. It's it's got so much on many different levels. So, and yet funny and silly.
So I haven't watched that. I have to have a look at it, because Keanu Reeves and Diane Keaton, in my mind, are a bit of a odd mix to throw together,
Yeah.
like just even their
And
characters.
yeah, and I've forgotten the other main character's name. He was in I think it's Shining. Oh,
Jack Nicholson.
yeah, Jack Nicholson's in it too. So
Uh,
yeah, so they all seem to not go together, but yet, you know, they go together beautifully. Yeah.
One of the shows that I'm, of course, connected to is Game of Thrones, which is a modern series for adults too, because there was the Harry Potter before that, which was for all kids of all ages. And Game of Thrones has been a huge reflection of power and how do we know who's good and how do we know who's bad. Divisions between cultures, like all sorts of perspectives on history, the wheel of time, changes in time. And one of the things I've learnt from the Game of Thrones community, because there's
Mm,
thousands of channels about talking about it, podcasts, magazines, there's a discussion that occurs outside the actual show itself. So the main thing that's shifted in terms of Neptune and its generational trend is that when TV first came, everybody would watch the show communally together at the same time. Game of Thrones has that a little bit now with the new series being released. But at the time, if TV releasing shows and the episodes, it would be the family coming together and it would be a family experience. So now what's happening generationally with the shift is that you can be talking to someone in a foreign country, you don't know them, you don't know what they look like, but you're talking about it on YouTube or some other platform and really talking about what opens up from the show itself. And it can be after the show is screened in that live release. It can be before the show is screened. It can be between the series. So there's an interesting shift in terms of how we communicate globally that's happening with even I feel like the Netflix phenomenon is creating different ways of different rabbit holes or
mm,
interconnections of the burrows underneath society. That's not
mm,
what we see daily in our face-to-face interactions. But kind of unconsciously, we're sort of starting to communicate in ways a lot more differently. And it's also digging up things that, well, Game of Thrones is a good example because it talks about history and perspectives on history and families. It's digging up a lot of what your perspective on generational conflict is and what the role of family is in that. So yeah, that's just a couple of the things. But we talked a lot about Neptune and its illusions, the potential it can throw up for you to start to explore things that may not be conscious to you, or also might be. Neptune has a very strong intuitive and psychic awareness or ability to pick up psychically. But a lot of that, like we shared earlier, you're not conscious of. You're not having a conscious interaction with it. So it becomes, for me, the Game of Thrones community outside that series is great because they start to talk about themes and they start to talk about issues, sometimes relating it to modern day conflicts or modern day
mm,
topics. But a lot of the time they relate it to their personal experiences and their identity with a certain character and the character's journey. Yeah, so the hero's journey is something that's always been part of all story from all time. But the Game of Thrones experience is interesting because it's almost like everybody is a flawed human being in that story. And that's the other thing that Netflix has given us an opportunity to identify with all these stories now about very dysfunctional characters. It's not like the honeymooners. A lot of the shows are about dysfunctionality. And we're getting to see that dysfunctional love relationships are the meat of a lot of our modern day series and quite odd relationships too. When I grew up, The Odd Couple was a series that I just genuinely adored the two actors and their comedy. But I think about how The Odd Couple just reflects the beginning of a lot of that witty scripting about being stuck with someone that you just don't get on with. And that was sort of now what I see in Netflix a lot in the other series and the movies. So much conflict is reflected, dysfunctional sort of families are reflected a lot, so we can start to feel like we're all flawed and we're all experiencing what that's like to be imperfect.
And how amazing is that, really, to be able to, because really we're all flawed, we're all on a life journey, and the illusion is to be perfect. But yet, the more you can just celebrate who you are right now, the more you can take, your gifts out into the world, the better it is. So it's not about the perfection. It's I'm bored of that illusion, really, that of the perfection. And the Netflix, whether it's Netflix, it does offer so much more as well than, you've got your documentaries, you've got your true stories, you've got inspiring life journeys of people who have made a choice and been rejected by their communities for creating a product, and then the product becomes a famous product in their country, and then the town welcomed the person back. There was an Indian guy who developed a product, and that was on a story on Netflix. So we can be inspired to follow a dream, and but we need to not just be within the screen. We need to be the actor in our own life, creating our dreams and putting that out into reality. So, it's great to sit and relax and have fun and be inspired. But also questions could be asked to yourself is, have I got enough time to rejuvenate, to relax, to recharge? How can I live differently? Where can I take time from something else to give to me, to go out, to follow your own inspiration out into the world? Because that totally rejuvenates you too, being out in nature. Taking yourself in front of a screen takes you on a journey, but does it really rejuvenate your body? There's many different ways we can find our balance and our peace.
Yeah, and tying that to the Neptunal energy, one of the things at Neptune that's quite difficult is it can keep you lost in the dream. And we were talking earlier, Caroline, about what does it take to go from your dream to reality, and how can we use perhaps a binging habit as a constructive way to look at what are the choices, what are you focusing on, what are you choosing to focus on. And so you shared a really great, I don't know if you want to read it, but it was really stimulating for me when you shared it before. Maybe just describe it.
Well, sometimes we can we have an idea and we want to create action, and sometimes we perhaps haven't thought about the intent behind the action. But if you're wanting to choose to do something and you find yourself feeling grumpy, to acknowledge where you are and say, okay, I'm feeling grumpy, to acknowledge it rather than run from it, go and hide from it. So where am I choosing to be? What am I going to do to get on with it? So if you're wanting to create something, what are you choosing? What do I need? You can ask yourself, what do I need to create for me? And once you start to feel it, and once you start to move with it, you're starting to direct your life. So basically, it's much easier to feel happier about your life if you're directing your life. So if you're fed up and you're feeling at mercy with yourself, if you're it's easier to be grumpy if you're fed up and feeling at the mercy of a situation. So just, again, ask yourself, where do I want to be? Look at the significance of why you want to be there. And it is a choice. So it has to be a choice. So, and once you make the choice, then you can make it happen. So whatever you're wanting to create, you know, you can choose it. So what's your intent behind it? So you're taking yourself into a new thought, feeling, and taking action on it. And it works. So it definitely works. And you're just, it's a bit like you're reprogramming yourself in those times when you're feeling grumpy. So you're not allowing it to take you over, or sometimes when you're grumpy, you pass it on. You give it to someone else, a bit of grumpy. So if you're feeling tired, instead of just getting on with it, you often can be, use it to let people know that you're tired. Push a little bit of space around you so people leave you alone. But you can choose to act differently. As much fun as it is to be a bit grumpy or not.
Yes, I smile because I'm a good example of that, grumpy pants. And so people can also, if you're, what you've just shared, Caroline, is an example of working with yourself or myself or with us together, of how we
Yeah,
can help support people to look at changing those habits, or look at what are the choices that you're choosing by the habits, or
yeah,
how to get out of a repetitive cycle of focusing on something that doesn't really give you satisfaction or keeps you in the grumpy. So,
yeah.
Caroline, do you want to share a little bit more about where you assist people to look at what they're choosing and how to create empowering habits?
Yes, well, my when I come together with clients, it's about celebrating who they are, where they're at, and what's not working within their life. So we're looking at the understanding of it, we're looking at the knowing of it, the accepting of it. We're looking at it from many different angles, so we can then help come together with the higher knowing of the situation, with different ways of creating. So you stepping forward. So you're not just coming to a brick wall and feeling as if you don't know how to get over it. You've got strategies, you've got support to be able to not just create in this circumstance, but through your life every day. So it's about really just celebrating who you are and taking the wisdom from your experiences. So that's what that I love to do, is to support people as they're creating their changes.
Yeah, I always, when you say that word celebration, I just instantly think of you. It gives me a,
Yeah.
it's hard to describe actually working with Caroline. It's, some aspects is hard to describe, but the feeling of celebration specifically I find hard to describe, because you just you capture it on that inner heart level, which is where I also
Oh.
find you opening people up to, perhaps they don't actually know what that is. So you actually help them to embody that, experience it, and see it or understand it more in their daily lives. So then they can follow naturally on their own inner heart feeling and their own
Oh,
dreams.
thanks, Angela.
Yeah.
Mm.
And if anyone's interested in working on, especially that generational shift, I'm a bit of an expert in transforming relationships. I offer a coaching and healing program, which is a series of sessions with tools to help you really look at those generational habits, ancestral habits, family habits, things that are operating through you that actually are not supporting your dream, and actually could actually be an obstacle that actually empowers your dream, but you're living in the sort of maybe negative aspect of it, or you're actually suffering from perhaps some of the family drama. Because I'm a bit of a expert of family drama myself. So I've learnt to discover things through the work I do about how to understand the undercurrents and see how your own dream is using that family energy to help yourself and empower the family to move forward as well, and build relationships that transform yourself and those around you. And then Caroline and I, we're also, if you're interested in working us together, Caroline and I
Yeah.
combine our own energies to look at what are the, Caroline's specialty is looking at the microcosm of your inner workings, and me, the big picture of your macrocosm around your life journey and next step and where you're focusing on your big picture to move forward, and how that can manifest on a daily level for you. So we also work together, and I'll put that link in the chat if you want to set up a time to talk to both of us to look at what that might be to work on your life journey. So Caroline, anything that you can think of to share for people before we close tonight with our rabbit hole adventure?
Well, hopefully I haven't sounded negative on the rabbit hole adventure, because we do get to travel anywhere when we go down the rabbit hole. So the country, the planet, the galaxy. So we get to run in the grass or ride a horse and live a different life. And I suppose for me, it's what are we looking for? What are we looking for? Because that is the biggest question to ask ourselves, is what are we looking for through it? Is it excitement, adventure? Is it creating something different, sharing a journey with a loved one, and a romance? And if we're looking for it through something that's outside of ourselves, what would it look like if we were creating it from the inside of ourselves? And how wonderful life could be if you've got this inner urge or calling, desire, that could be your soul, your higher self, urging you to step forward in an area of your life. Having the support from Angela and myself together or separately, it could really assist to take your dreams into reality. And I know both Angela and I would love to assist you if you need the support, and let us support you and celebrate your dreams. So, yeah.
Thanks, Caroline.
Oh.
And thanks everyone for watching.
Yes, thank you.
Or listening.
It's an interesting topic, isn't it? Really. So yeah. I'm like almost imagining you, Angela, with bunny ears. So because.
Oh, I went to Doctor Who because you were saying galaxy and timeline. I was like, oh my God, that's like 20 years of following Doctor Who. Don't take me to the TARDIS. What now? Take me to the TARDIS.
I used to hide behind the couch when the Daleks came. I was a bit of a wuss.
No, I was working out how Davros was going to be destroyed. I wanted to get Davros. I wasn't worried about them. It was the Cybermen that freaked me out. And the Sontarans. But yes, sorry, that's a whole nother topic. And that's another rabbit hole. I could spend my whole... I did spend my whole childhood there, so I won't go back this quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember my parents used to say to me, you must have square eyes, because, too much television supposedly gave you square eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Caroline. So we'll
take care.
We'll go to another TARDIS adventure next time. I've forgotten the topic.
For May. Yes.
Do you have the topic off the top of your head?
Yes. The May theme is extracting your jewel. So we'll be Tuesday, the 14th of May at 7 p.m. So looking forward to it. So balancing your elements within. So on this, so there's a few different elements within, and we're going to be looking at balancing them and working with the higher aspects of yourself. So balance on the inner levels. So I'm looking forward to May. So, and should be fun.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.